Welcome to the TNC Random Fandom podcast. We are here to have fun and talk all things pop culture, collecting, and nerd culture in general. Make sure you join the conversation during our live stream with our most excellent hosts, Craig Borden and Tommy Mock. Let the shenanigans begin.
All right.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of TC's Random Fandom. I am your host, Craig Borden. With me as my not-so-silent Bob compatriot, Tommy Mock. How the hell are you?
I'm fine. I should be asking you, how the hell are you doing?
I'm so much better after getting past the, I'll say, horrible food poisoning from chicken wings or whatever we ate over the weekend here. But to that point, I saw the Bills win, so I was happy with that. I woke up in just enough time to watch Josh Allen running into the end zone, so all was well. And I watched James Bond movies and all the sorts of other stuff over the weekend. So it worked. I guess it could have been worse. I just do not wish that upon anybody, the horrible level of food poisoning that my family ended up having with me. So good times. Yeah. But anyways, let's talk some fun. Goof around. We have a crazy agenda.
Yes.
So, Tommy, this was your idea. Intro everybody into what we were talking about this week.
So, out of the blue, I was doing a, walkthrough of, the good old Walmart here in Canandaigua, and I had noticed that they had on their shelf a couple of retro toys. And when I say retro toys, I'm talking about toys that were obscure even when they were released, to say the least. One of them was Biker Mice from Mars, and the other was Sectors. So I thought to myself, Craig needs to be a part of this. So I took a picture of them and I sent them to him. I said, episode idea, lost toy lines and cartoons of the 80s and 90s. But then there was the big caveat to that, which was cartoons and toy lines that were greenlit, that were geared towards children, that were based on very mature movies. So we're going to talk about
just
that
to give everybody
bit.
The fun. This is the first Biker Mouse from Mars piece that Tommy was talking about, in case anybody's watching on the live feed and has no idea what the hell we're talking about. This is the kind of weird we're going to get into tonight. And This was a very odd show, but I remember being very entertained by it with a slight what the hell is going on at the same time.
I think that this was actually, and I could be wrong, I'm just going off the top of my head, that this was kind of in a kind of a combat way of trying to dig into some of that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle money that was out there.
Since you were 100% accurate.
Since the Ninja Turtles were so, popular, it was like, you know what, let's make some more anthropomorphic creatures and give them superpowers or whatever and make them look cool. And we got Biker Mice from Mars.
Yes, and there's not much that screams late 80s, early 90s more than that, picture right there of the gang.
100%. And the thing is that it was really cool, but at the same time, didn't last very long. But for some reason, they've made some carded figures that they sell at Walmart. And I'm wondering if somebody somewhere said, you know what, we need to bring this back, or if it's something that was like, we have this intellectual property. Let's see if we can, get some of that suckered nostalgia money.
I think that's a lot of it right now, because I just happened to, for the sheer shits and giggles of it, because that was the other part of this, Tommy, that you wanted to talk to tonight, was what were some of these things that actually were good enough to maybe make a comeback. Clearly, somebody thinks the Biker Mice from Mars are pretty damn close to being that. Not seen since 1993 or 95 here was when they went off the show, is when it said. I was looking to see if they got greenlit for anything else. They did have a show in the UK in 2019, is what I'm seeing. So they were trying to do a revival in that, but apparently those were reruns of a very small streaming TV only kind of thing, it sounds like, in 2006. So might have been just ahead of the streaming thing, to be caught in that wave of the Pluto TVs and all these other things that are
Right.
wonderful with the revival of cartoons from our glory days.
But that's the thing though, is when you get Pluto TV and some of these other like free streaming sites, are you getting like reruns of the original series, or are you getting the like somebody's new studio and we're reviving Biker Mice from Mars? Yeah, that's what I would
Yeah.
ask. And I had asked that question to some of our viewers on Instagram was, is there any toy lines or cartoons from your childhood that you would like to see have revived? And which then that kind of put me in this mindset of, let me think of some other things that were out there. I'm not going to touch Cabbage Patch Kids because Cabbage Patch Kids were always around, but they kind of
that was
petered
one
out.
I added on my list too, but they didn't have as far as a TV show, that was the centric part to this. That was not a big part of that push. That was the doll itself was the centric thing.
Right. But then I thought of other toy lines that were just kind of sad in a way. So everybody knows the movie Child's Play, right? You had the Good Guy doll. I think that's what it was called, right? The Good Guy doll.
Yep, you got it.
That was based on an actual toy called My Buddy. And I can remember
Going for it.
I can remember the My Buddy commercial, and now as an adult watching this commercial and thinking, God, that kid is sad. That is a sad kid because obviously he has no friends on his street, and his parents are like, we got to get him some help. So instead of getting him some help or helping him make friends or anything, they buy him a doll. And here you go. Now you're going to take this doll everywhere you go. And now I have the weird kid with the doll.
Screams 80s.
but then they also,
you're raised by the TV. Here you go. I don't know. What would this comparison do for you, Tommy? Is this having any problems?
Oh, see, that's so bad. That's so bad.
It's so close.
But that's exactly what it is. And then even made one for little girls called Kid Sister. And the Kid Sister commercial was very similar to that. But except for, they make it look like, oh, this kid has all these friends and they all have My Buddy dolls or Kid Sister dolls, so, but I always thought of it, it was like, man, why would you, if you have all these friends, you don't need a My Buddy doll that's going to go everywhere you go. You're going to go out, ride bikes with your friends.
Why would I do that? I have My Buddy. And not to mention, I had the, looking back on it, it's such a silly, 80s, 90s commercial. My buddy and me, back and forth, they're swinging on the playground and all that kind of stuff. I remember after seeing the pictures of this video on here from that commercial back in the 80s, and I was like, oh my God, just went straight to it, didn't even hesitate. No, did not pass go, did not collect $200 on that one.
and it's funny though, is that sometimes it triggers that memory, and then it's like all of a sudden you're singing the song, and then it's like, crap, now I got that earworm in my head, and that's all.
I won't do that to you, even though I have the video right here.
My buddy, wherever he goes, I'm gonna go, or something like that.
There it is. It's exactly the same melody. Like you didn't have to be twisted, or what's it called? The guy we were talking about Warrant last week with making cherry pie. You didn't have to think about it. You just did it.
just did it. But so I'm gonna throw one more out there at you, because especially to you, and I want your take on this forgotten toy line that I think actually is owned possibly by Hasbro. And again, I do very little research on this because I want it always to be off the top of my head, so I can actually have people screaming. Yeah, I want people screaming at their radios, going, "What the hell's going on? Shut up!"
What is he?
But so I had these. I had the Command Center. I had Leader 1. I had Psykill. I know you know who I'm thinking of. GoBots.
Freaking GoBots.
GoBots. What are your thoughts on GoBots? Now, I had Transformers too, but I also had GoBots, which to me they were made by Tonka, which any 80s kid knows what Tonka trucks are. basically destroy them, and they'd still, But to me, they were kind of
cut
like
you with razor sharp rusted metal, one or the other.
But to me, GoBots were kind of like those like the knockoffs, but they weren't like cheap knockoffs, but they didn't seem like they were as cool as the way Transformers were. So what's your thought?
So I think it's funny you brought that up because I actually excluded from this because they got so slammed by the Transformers. It wasn't even funny. So slammed. I don't know if you've seen the show on the History Channel or not, but it's called The Toys That Built America, and they did an episode on they didn't call it Transformers, they called it like Changing Robots or something like that. I can't remember what it was, and it was about that story between the Transformers and GoBots. And the funnier thing is, the people that thought of GoBots thought of the name Transformers apparently during this whole thing of them trying to actually take the robots and figure out what to call them and all that kind of stuff. And they said, no, nobody's going to do that. They'll never get that because that's what everybody thinks are those things that hangs on the electrical lines. Why would they think anything about our toys when they're thinking about those kind of things? So, and then some guy that literally just pitched this idea to Hasbro by repackaging toys that already existed in Japan, putting a new storyline on them and calling it a day. Done. Didn't even have to make the toys. They were already there. They just could not get them to the United States quick enough, Tommy. And that's the difference between the little bit of age gap that you and I have. I grew up in the time where the original Transformers cartoon was the rerun phase. So, the 86, 87, 88 is really when I got into toys and all that kind of stuff like that. So I got the pleasure of watching them on Saturday morning cartoons, and the GoBots were on TV still, but they were really, really trucking.
Yeah, they were kind of like
the Kmart ones to me.
Kmart version of Transformers.
For those listening, Kmart
is a department store that no longer exists.
That will probably not make a comeback, unlike everything else on this list, because it's about in that 40-year recycle.
So here's another one that I'm going to throw you with that falls into that transforming thing that somebody greenlit this and was like, somebody had to have bought it because it. What do you have you heard of Rock Lords?
I have. And it's not
the transforming
rock,
my pet rock.
It's a transforming my pet. That's about the best way to summarize it. It's like, okay, great. It transforms, but it's a rock.
But it's a rock.
It wasn't even like anything special. There was ones that looked like gold. There was ones that looked like, silver. It was like, okay, great. How many different rocks can you really make? And it's like, oh no, we're trying to hide for our enemies. Okay, cuddle up into like a turtle.
Yep.
We're done. That was an interesting one. That one came up in my research too, and I completely forgot about Rock Lords because, like I said, I made the joke, but the closest thing to anything rock that I grew up with was Fraggle Rock with the Hensons.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I don't, and even Fraggle Rock, I think had a little bit of a resurgence too. In the early to mid 2000s, I believe they kind of tried to bring them back, but some things hit, some things miss. That's the reason why I'm not going to.
Right?
What's that?
It's the Muppets effect. They can just come back as puppets whenever they want.
Right. But that's the reason why on my list I will not bring up Masters of the Universe. I will not bring up G.I. Joe because in recent days we've had live action movies. We've had cartoons just re-imaged or reimagined versions of those cartoons, as well as Masters of the Universe. But some of the cartoons that I actually loved as a kid that actually had toy lines but kind of petered out. Silverhawks. They came out.
That's one I didn't have.
They came out around the same time as Thundercats. Now I am excluding Thundercats as well because they kind of had a little bit of a resurgence too. They had a cartoon, I believe, on Cartoon Network.
Was that one of the ones that Kevin Smith actually directed, or was that He-Man?
He did He-Man.
He did He-Man, okay.
But still in that anime style of animation, and character design, but still it was, and they even had a subsequent toy line that came with it, but it's again hit or miss. Did it come back and it just didn't hit? I mean, I can go down to Walmart or the Ollie's and I can find 500,000 Masters of the Universe items now because nobody's buying it, but they're still stocking the shelves of it, you know? So, but I would love to see like Silverhawks again. Now, Silverhawks, you know, I guess they were an acquired taste, especially during that time. You had, you know, Thundercats, and they were awesome. I loved Thundercats, and I think that again, when we talk about saturating the market, you got, you know, something that's already taken off, and now you're just trying to repackage it and with a twist, if you will. And I think that's one of the reasons why Silverhawks never made it.
Yeah. So I got a hell of a twist on one here for you. Because this one was definitely one that wasn't successful, but it was successful enough that people remember these. So I got to put them out here. And this was not Foo Fighters, but Food Fighters.
Oh God, yes. So
there was literally a character, Tommy, called Commander Corndog.
Oddly enough, that was my nickname in high school.
No, there it is. Didn't quite make the rank of commander, though, did you?
No.
But thank you for your service as always, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Now I remembered these. Now these were something that I just really never was like, why would I want this? This is not something that was up my alley.
Yeah. And one of the TV show that I remember was like they were hanging out in the refrigerator. It was like that really weird 80s claymation, kind of like the California Raisins.
Mm-hmm.
Just not obviously as popular. And I think they were trying to per another conversation we had earlier. Somebody had a good idea. You tried to steal it. It didn't quite work out.
And like Brother Weeze would say in regards to remakes and on songs and everything, is snatch and improve. Sometimes you may snatch it, but you're definitely not improving it.
That was definitely not an improvement. The Pet Rock was perfect the way it is. You didn't need to put more crap on it. Just saying. not the Rock Roids or whatever we were talking about.
The Rock Lords. You didn't need to make the Rock transform into a robot.
So I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't mention a couple of these ones that were like, I'll say Disney characters that I'm shocked that Disney is Disney and they rehash everything. Mm-hmm. Come on, Mickey Mouse has been around for how long? Like, you know, basically 100 years at this point, right? So, one that was surprising me because we did see a resurgence of DuckTales, Chip and Dale, some of these things over the last few years. I was shocked in a world of superheroes that we are living in right now that Let's Get Dangerous, Darkwing Duck has not made a resurgence yet. That one was one of those ones that I was just like, how in the world has this not happened? You had, you know, the world of Scrooge McDuck and everybody's back. Why wouldn't you bring in the B celebrity superhero that is Darkwing Duck? Go ahead.
I'm gonna tell you right now, you better start a change.org in a petition for Disney to get Darkwing Duck back. And then I will call, and then I'll even call Disney execs myself and say, you need to bring this back because there's at least one fan that wants to see it.
I would say that it was one of those things. I remember it being a really big thing for 5 minutes, and then it was just gone. There was nothing to it. I remember there was toys in the stores. My brother and I had all of them. We were stupid enough to sell them, and they're worth a lot of freaking money now, and all that kind of good stuff. It was only on TV for 2 seasons. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It was almost 100 episodes in those 2 seasons. Because that's what you do in the 90s. You just beat the living piss out of that episodes in a kid's shark cartoon, right?
Well, you know, the funny thing about that, and I'll just go on a small tangent, is remember when television shows were every season was at least 24 episodes in a season? And now it's like you barely get 12. And then if you're doing something that's streaming, you might get 8.
There is a level of balance there. 65 episodes in a year. How well are all those 65 episodes?
True.
Where if you look at some of the shows like we watch and enjoy now, that those 8 episodes tell a complete story and a really good story through those 8 episodes. So, I didn't hear you bitching about the Mandalorian. Just I'm just kidding. Sorry,
Okay.
had to say it.
I liked the Mandalorian. Okay, I liked the Mandalorian. I respected the Mandalorian. I could care less about the Book of Boba Fett. I think they did him a disservice. The Acolyte was not my cup of tea, but I'm not going to talk poorly about it because it's still part of a franchise that I adore and I love, and I'm
Correct.
hoping for
And that
good
could be
things.
a whole nother episode.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
But no.
There's something to that as far as the way we get to taste and get a really good flavor out of it now, instead of it just being watered down for the sake of getting 12 episodes.
Right.
Or 20, right? So, but let's beat the deaths out of some more of these 80s and 90s cartoons that we were talking about. It's your turn, buddy.
So if we're going to go back and forth, if we're going to throw things at each other, I got one for you. Captain Planet. Captain Planet
was on my list as well.
Big on.
He's our hero.
In the USA Network, I think he was originally. And I remember, it was a pretty decent cartoon. It had a very good message about, saving the planet. And I think even SNL did a episode with Don Cheadle as Captain Planet. So if you're watching this or you're listening to this, look up the SNL skit of Captain Planet with Don Cheadle. Freaking hilarious.
Yeah, well, Don Cheadle's a funny man to begin with. I'm so glad that he got his due in getting to be War Machine and getting to do all the great things he's done, and obviously bolster his movie career, because he's been in a lot of great movies, especially since and before. But really cool that we get to see that. But yeah, 100% Captain Planet. Like I said, that was one of those theme songs that'll be ever ingrained in a whole generation of children. That theme song, which just kills me with some of the fun that's going on. It's like, you learn this on after school television, but no, just don't worry about all this stuff that's going on in the world over here. Don't Captain Planet didn't have any, right? It's bullshit. It's just animated. Don't worry about it. So I'd want to make sure I throw in a couple ones here, because we've obviously talked a lot about some other ones here from our generations, and there was a couple that I don't have a ton of basis on, but I saw the toy lines happen and I was like, okay, great, there was some really cool stuff here, and then it just kind of fizzled out. And the one that I've seen in a lot of cons and flying around the internet for people doing cosplay for whole ensembles was Kim Possible and Ben 10. Those were two from my brother's generation, which are a good 5 years behind me, and obviously this collective group. But those two cartoons had massive toy lines, great long cartoon runs, and they just went and vanished. I have no idea what happened to them. I haven't heard about them in years, and the two of them could be something that I was honestly not surprised if one of those would have became a live action movie at some point, especially with the world everything is now.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but Kim Possible was or is a Disney property.
I believe you are correct. I will double check that.
So Kim Possible,
and that would be them trying to dig into their own things.
So Kim Possible being a Disney property, I would have to say that they probably, milk that horse or milk that cow. Horse. Why would you milk a horse? But milk that cow as much as it possibly could. But then, again, it's one of those things that if they got something else that's coming down the pipe, they have to kind of clear the shelf for it to be put on there. So I can see them saying that
It might be
it's
time
met
to put them back on the shelves.
right.
The show stopped airing in 2007, and you have a generation that watched that growing up that is now old enough to go take their kids to that movie, maybe, or they're
Mhm.
very young kids. So
Well, you know,
that'd be interesting.
that's a good point too, because I remember the Ben 10 toys when my daughter was younger. She never really got into it, but I always thought that they had some like really cool play features. And then I do believe that they had a couple of video games, maybe for uh, Game Boy Advanced. I think there was a couple.
Yep.
Um,
I know my
but
brother had a couple of them, and that was probably about that era because we never had him and I are old enough that we didn't have DSs as kids. It stopped with Game Boy Colors and Advances.
right, right. But yeah, I think I remember Ben 10 being a really cool show, and I want to say that it did have some sort of a reimagining on one of the kid channels. I could be
Cartoon
wrong.
Network, I think.
Yeah, and definitely in that anime style. If I again, I do very minimal research, except for when I'm looking to make sure that I'm not misremembering something.
Yeah, actually, I am a lot more off. I didn't realize that they had different versions of Ben 10. I did not know that. So this is me missing one. I haven't seen toys, I haven't seen anything, but it's been on the air as recent as 2020.
Oh wow.
The original run that you and I are talking about ended in 08.
Okay. So
So
yeah.
yeah, it's been a bit. So,
All
but yeah,
right.
that one I messed up. I apologize, but I did get Kim Possible right, and she was badass. I'm not gonna lie, very
So
James Bond, Mission Impossible ish.
all right. And now I'm gonna dig something out that I very seldomly
Oh,
see anybody talk about. Now, my sister had some of these, and I thought they were actually pretty cool. So again, I'm not going to mention Care Bears because Care Bears kind of had this, you know, on again, off again. You know, they've been around, just like Strawberry Shortcake. I'm not going to mention Strawberry Shortcake because they recently, and I won't
it's
mention,
consistent.
and I won't mention because you mentioned this in a previous episode. Friggin' My Little Pony and Bronies. No, not going to do that. No, but do you know what a wuzzle is?
I don't know what a wuzzle is.
So a
I don't recall that
wuzzle,
one. You stumped me.
and I want to say that they had a cartoon, but again, you'll have to check me on this. A wuzzle was a stuffed animal, the toy, and I'm just thinking of the toy, but I do believe that there was a cartoon, a short-lived cartoon.
Oh fucking
And
fudge! I remember these things.
so it
I didn't know what they
basically
were called.
was one creature and another creature spliced together. So you had a bumblebee lion, and his name was Bumble Lion. And then there was Elaroo, who was an elephant with an elephant kangaroo. There was Rhinonki, which was a rhinoceros and a monkey.
Trying to get a picture.
And I can't remember. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but my sister had some of these. I actually thought they were pretty cool, and
Mhm.
you know, but they were kind of in that same vein of the plush, fun animals like Care Bears, and even Care Bears even went and they brought in some new animals like I believe they called them Care Bear cousins. But yeah,
It's
you're
kind of
trying
what
to
they
find
look
a
like,
wuzzle.
animation style. There you
There
go.
you
I found a
go.
wuzzle.
Yes. Yes. And I want to
And
say,
is it actually pronounced that or is this supposed to be because they kind of look like in that same animation style as like Winnie the Pooh? Is it supposed to be a woozle? Like heffalumps and woozles?
I always known them to be wuzzles, but
Okay.
I
You
could
see
be
where I'm going with
mispronouncing
that
it.
though. It almost looks like that same thing. So, but no, that's interesting. Good stuff.
And I want to
No,
say
you
that
got me.
so the one in the back, okay, so there's okay, now I think I remember all their names. So you have Elaroo, Bumble Lion, Rhinonki, uh Musil.
There is a Musil.
And you have Hippopotamus, but I don't think that's their name.
That is on the list. That is on the list.
And
I found the Wikipedia page.
Oh, okay. So, and then the bear. What is the bear? What was the bear? Oh, crap. What was that bear's name? Crap. I can't remember what the bear's name was.
Butterbear.
Butterbear. That's right, because it's a butterfly. You're stupid.
Yep, there you go. Stupid. And it looks like all the bad guys are all like, it looks like they're actually like lizards and dragons and dinosaurs and stuff like that.
Bunch of douchebags.
Yeah. Crocosaurus is the bear. And the Brat and Flizzard bad guys.
Oh, that's horrible. That's horrible.
That is horrible, but there it is. Hey, we gotta have some fun, right? That's how these things happen. But before we get into our second half of the show here, Tommy, I do have a whole category here that I'm shocked that some of these haven't made a comeback, and they did have some really good toy lines, and that is all the Nicktoons, Inspector Gadget, some of the stuff that was from the early Nickelodeon days that I'm shocked and that hasn't made a comeback. One that stood out to, like I said, was Inspector Gadget. Was one of the first cartoons I remember watching religiously on Nickelodeon before the real Nicktoon stuff started, where you had the Rugrats and Real Monsters, Rocco, Ren and Stimpy, obviously, things like that. But yeah, give me one. Or you?
So I could go on top of that. So I remember when Nickelodeon first started, and a lot of their cartoons came from Canada and the UK. And they had a cartoon called Danger Mouse. And I remember watching Danger Mouse when I was like 6 years old. And they had, oh God, You Can't Do That on Television was also not a cartoon, but that was a show that Alanis Morissette got her start on. And I absolutely loved that show when I was a kid. And that's where Nickelodeon got the green slime from.
100%. That was a great gag that they had on that. And then it steered from that into Double Dare and everything else. We could do a whole show on Nickelodeon, to be honestly, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, those years spun into so many things, and that's about the only property that Disney doesn't really own from my childhood outside of Transformers. So at this point, this is how it is.
Eventually.
But there are, yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, like, and then I was going to use this as a segue into our other half of the show here, which is talking about, kids shows that probably shouldn't have been kids shows in the other first place because they are rating movies that inspired them. But I've looked back and I've, since shown my daughter, all the Nicktoons and all this stuff. Hey Arnold, all those ones. Yeah, great. No problems. Love them. They're great. But there are some that are on the borderline. And some on the borderline are, I love them to death. And they were my two favorites, of course, because they were the grossest thing in the world. And my mom didn't want me watching them. My dad was dying laughing because he enjoyed them. Ren and Stimpy and Rocco's Modern Life.
Yep.
So the two of them stuck in here all day, every day still.
It's funny that, and again, I think we should probably keep that for a Nickelodeon-centric show, because I remember Nickelodeon being the anti-Disney. And that's how it was built.
That was the fun part with it.
Right. It was the Toys R Us of channels. It was for kids by kids is how they kind of build it and everything. And, when we do that, I actually have a friend of mine who was on the game show with me. His name is Gene McGee, and he actually works at Universal Studios. And it was because of his love of Nickelodeon and Nickelodeon shows is the reason why he works there now. So, and he's worked there for 20 plus years. So I would love to have him on the show.
I love hearing.
Yep.
And I think you just signed him up.
I just signed him up. So Gene, if you're listening, you're coming on the Nickelodeon show.
Good deal. So, but anyway, Tommy, talk me into where you want to go here with the fun with the R-rated movies that got kids shows and eventually kids toys.
So I will preface this with the fact that back in the 80s, we were still in the midst of the Cold War. And being ultra patriotic, being, and this is not a political conversation, but back in the 80s, we had movies that depicted, macho men being as tough as an army. And we had Rambo. We had, the A-Team on TV. Just these
Name an
really
Arnold
cool,
Schwarzenegger movie.
any Arnold Schwarzenegger, Conan, got it, Predator. So these are movies that technically we should not have been watching as children, but for some reason we were exposed to this stuff, and it was stuff that we were consuming and enjoying, and maybe not necessarily knowing why we enjoyed it, but it was flashy, it was cool, the hero won, so that's where I'm going with this. But there are instances that some of the stuff that we were watching had absolutely no business being on a toy shelf, let alone getting a cartoon based on it. And I'm going to start this one off with the Toxic Avenger. The Toxic Avenger from Troma Studios. And anybody who's familiar with Troma knows that they are the quintessential independent B-movie bonanza. They give you everything from blood and guts to gratuitous nudity, drug use, everything that you can think of in all of their movies are, and
way over the top.
Way over the top.
Too real.
And that, so anybody who's watched the original Toxic Avenger knows that is not a movie that would translate to a children's cartoon. Now, we get back in, I think it was the early 90s, mid 90s, we got the Toxic Crusaders. And there's the toy line and the cartoon.
I knew you were going there. I didn't know which one you were going to do first. But 100% crazy over the top, animated, and in that style, right? But it's, to your point, they had to clean up a lot to get from A to B. And for somebody to do the mental gymnastics in that pitch room to a toy line, we're going to give you a cartoon and a toy line based on this, and you're showing them the movie, and it's like literally, like you said, filled with drug needles and pick a problem, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, here's your cleaned up version, and then, like you mentioned, there's the toys.
Yep.
Which honestly came out all right. A little odd, but came out all right.
But I remember seeing this when, as I've gotten older and going, God, how did that get greenlit? Who said, who took the Toxic Avenger and said, you know what, that will make a great cartoon. But if you notice, he's holding that American flag because, by God, I think back in the day when the original Toxic Avenger came out, he was billed as the first superhero from New Jersey.
That makes sense. I bet that made Bon Jovi feel horrible. But I could have sworn I had one a minute ago that was a picture of him literally in that same picture holding the American flag running toward the camera. There it is. It's time to shape up. Shape up time. So that was one that you definitely wanted to talk to. Is there anything other notes you want to hit on that one? Okay.
No, because that one, because like I said, in order to understand exactly where I'm coming from, you have to see the original movie and then look at this cartoon and say, like you said, what were the mental gymnastics that got you from point A to point B?
In the 80s, it might have been how many pounds of Coke, but just how it is. I would hope there's not too many toy execs that are doing that, but you never know, right? Wasn't that guy in Big doing a little bit of on the side there? Yeah. So I mentioned the joke about literally picking Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. They were all R-rated in the 80s, all the way up
Mhm.
until the point where he did The Last Action Hero, which, by the way, had a toy line.
Yes, it did.
They were
Yes, it did.
all 100% marketed. I think the Running Man might have been the only exception. Demolition Man had toys. Obviously, Predator, all of those ones. Everyone had toys. Tommy, those were 100% also not kids' movies in any appropriate level. The amount of violence is about, I'd say, the worst thing in them. But to that point, that might be something that passes today a little easier. I wouldn't, this is the PMRC level, fun in the 80s that you wouldn't think that they would have went to that level to do that. So,
And I think you're right but what I don't understand is we don't have nowadays the Saturday morning cartoons that we used to get up early for and watch.
yeah.
There's not that. Everything has to be educational, but yet somehow, some way, I don't think something like that would get greenlit anymore. I think
Oh.
I think regular when it comes to movies will be as nasty and gory as they want to be. It seems like now everything is like murder porn, if you will.
As I pull up a brand new look of what a new modern Last Action Hero toy looks like, and there it is.
Right. But see,
Jack Slater.
That is right, exactly. But that's from like now, I believe that's not
Correct.
what was
That's 100% a new toy. That's not back
right.
then.
So that's somebody
Back then they looked more
that's
like that.
Yeah. But I liked that movie. That's a movie you don't see that on television in rotation anymore. But I remember those toys because they were marketing that movie to kids for the sheer purpose of selling merchandise.
Yeah. I think the other one that was a funny one that you wanted to pitch is like, hey, we have a movie called The Predator. Let's go make toys out of it. Don't even know what it's about, but you're going to put Predator on kids' toys.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Don't worry about it.
Now,
no big deal. There's not any weird wording here.
and also Alien. So the Alien franchise actually almost had a cartoon. They almost had a cartoon, but I think the cartoon was going to be something similar to Spawn. Remember the Spawn cartoon from McFarlane?
Speaking of child inappropriate.
But that was geared towards adults, and it was on HBO or Showtime or something like that. And that was geared towards adults, whereas the Toxic Avenger was definitely a kid's cartoon. So I'm going to throw one out there. I'm going to throw one out there, and it goes along the lines of that whole patriotism thing that I was talking about back in the early 80s. And I mentioned it earlier, it's basically Rambo. Rambo was a movie, and all of the later sequels to Rambo just got even more bloodier and blood and guts and everything. But yet somehow, some way, we got the Rambo and the Force of Freedom. And not only did it get a short-lived cartoon, but it also got a action figure line, which actually the action figures had some pretty cool play features, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So like the weapons would fire, but they were like on tethers, so you didn't like lose them, but they also couldn't go too far. But I mean,
I had some again, I lost them.
Somebody greenlit a Rambo cartoon. So you had the good guys and the bad guys, Yeah, there you go, right there.
Rambo Commando. Because why not?
And for some reason back in the day, if they weren't a GI Joe action figure, most of the action figures that were pumped out, and this includes the early Kenner Star Wars days, very minimal articulation. You know, the arms only went up and down. You know, the legs only went up and down.
Elbows.
No elbows, except but the old GI Joes did. And then when they got the swivel at the elbow, oh, that was even better, because now you can actually hold.
This was one of those toy lines, I think, that actually, in toy history, Tommy, I think the Rambo ones were actually one of those ones that initiated that pivot here.
Mm-hmm.
They were one of the first ones, if not the first one. So you can see them in there a little bit. I know this is a million-year-old picture that somebody scanned in, but they're in there. You can see them a little bit right where they make the shirt sleeves and stuff.
Yep, and again, it's you can't really see, but they all had different play features for those action figures, which I thought was pretty cool. But again, the articulation back then was just really crappy, so they didn't really move. But I'm going to throw one out there. I'm going to jump ahead of you because you probably already did this, but I'm doing this for your friend and mine, my future son-in-law, Narada. Brought this up because I was talking to him about this episode, and he mentioned RoboCop.
I was actually on that one.
I'll let you take this one since it's yours. So, but I want Narada to get credit.
I love RoboCop movies, but yeah, I love Narada for that one because that's a good one. Because I was looking at this and I'm like, I remember these toys. They were right next to the Transformers in Kmart and Walmart and everything like that back in the day. Right there, boom, boom. Because hey, it's robots. Shocking, right? So, but they had some really cool stuff that a lot of other toys, to your point, took at the time. I think a lot of the stuff that they did on the RoboCop lines turned into the Batman animated series toys stuff, just on a smaller scale, because the figure itself was only like a 4-inch instead of these were closer to a 6-inch toy, because RoboCop is big and badass, right? He came from the, beat 'em up movies and stuff like that. This is 100% in the vein of the Rambo movies and everything. 80s full crazy action scenes, tons of swearing, drug use, like you mentioned, and just literally heads blowing up level of violence, stuff you would see in a horror movie. But no, let's make a kid's cartoon out of it, because this actually did have a decently successful cartoon run. I want to say it was like three years or so like that. I remember this being on Saturday morning cartoons with another one here I'm going to get to, which just because it was like the police hour with freaking Police Academy of all goddamn things. But we'll get
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
So, but they ended up doing a decent job of converting this to a kids thing, but it was clearly, hey, we have a good idea with RoboCop. What else can we make with robots? Turn around and make an animated series with those robots, and then just go whoosh out into the animated world with whoever can give me a decent script, and it'll get sucked up. And to their credit, it did.
And these, if I remember, also had some really interesting play features. Like the old school cap guns used to have, some of them used to have the rolls, cap rolls. And I think
that's what this thing is right here.
Yep.
You pull it through and it goes.
Right. And that was really, that was a very cool play feature, something that was not seen before, except for in cap guns.
Yeah.
But to your credit, it's a far cry from what the source material is, but it's still a cyborg basically shooting up bad guys. Now, granted, like on the A-Team, nobody really got killed. Everybody got blown up, but nobody got killed. We shot all of these, all this ammunition, but no one got hit. Somebody might have gotten grazed.
Like stormtroopers can't hit anything either, Tommy, right? So, but yeah, it was cool. Like I said, they actually, to their credit, I forget the name of the company that did this. I don't think it was Kenner. Shocking. It says right there at the bottom that this is a Kenner toy ad, but the banner kind of cuts it off on the feed. I apologize. 1990. This is actually an ad from a 1990 Kenner catalog that you're looking at right here. So I mentioned the other one here a minute ago. That was an odd one that I was like, oh my god, I forgot they even. I remember this show too. Was like I said, the Police Hour all of a sudden was RoboCop was on early, and then for some reason the Police Academy was on afterwards, and I didn't know, being that age at that time, watching the cartoons until I got into like high school, college, that there were even Police Academy movies until I started seeing the reruns on Comedy Central and stuff like that. As I did the because they age fun, right? But at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my god, the movies are so much better than these shitty toys. And that's saying a lot because those movies are not that great. And they made like what, 50 of them?
I gotta say, I appreciate the Police Academy movies. I do.
Yep.
The cartoon, short-lived. I've seen the toys, but I did not
find some good pictures of them.
Did not buy any of the toys.
Oh, I didn't have any of them.
But there was.
Let me blow it up a bit. But they were really zany looking. I don't know how well you can see them in that.
I can see them a little bit.
Very kind of like cartoon animated out in kind of almost like in that Fat Albert vibe.
Yes. Yep.
See if I can find some other ones. Not a lot of high resolution pictures of the Police Academy pictures.
They don't want you to know.
They probably wanted to go away like the holiday special.
It's the dirty little secret. Hey, you leave my Life Day out of this.
I didn't say there's a problem with Life Day. I said George Lucas has a problem with it. You talk about people that want something to die really quickly.
So while you're looking that up, also look up another toy line that it just came to me just now. And it was something that I actually liked at the cartoon, and I liked the toy line that came with it.
There you go.
Oh yeah, there you go.
They're kind of like that's Mahoney allegedly.
Yep.
Very.
That could be Steve Gutenberg.
I forget what the damn dog was named. Yeah, Steve Gutenberg. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no. So there was another toy line called Cops and Crooks, and that was a really cool. But that was a really cool.
Wonderful on the internet of doing a live podcast. I can just find whatever the hell is at our fingertips, Tommy. Oh yeah, I remember these. They had some really crazy things going on because they were like almost like cyborg-like things, right?
Yeah. They all had like a special, again, I will say play feature and everything. Now they weren't based on anything, no previous adult material, source material, but these were actually a really cool action figure that I remember from back in the day, and I was like, you know what, this is actually, I'd like to see something like this come back.
Yeah, same thing. I remember all these with the cartoon Saturday morning on the commercials. These were a big toy that always came on for a long time because of that same thing we were talking about earlier, the cap gun thing. What kid doesn't love a cap gun, right? Same thing with this guy. It's like this big thing with the strips. You put him through it and bang, 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 bang. And there's nothing more fun about making your toys come to life a little bit more, right?
Yep. And they all had like, they obviously they had names that basically told you what side they were on. Like this one's Hyena. The other one was Bulletproof.
Yep.
But no, I thought that was a good one. So I do want to bring up another toy line, but as we approach the end of the show, I want to ask you if there was one toy line from your childhood that is, besides Darkwing Duck, what would you want to be brought back? In modern,
what would I want to be brought back? And let me get the Google thing here. That's a good one. As far as bringing them back in a modern form, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Let me look around here.
What's around here?
The problem is all these things are like, you know, the comedies and movies and stuff that I have and whatnot. That's a good one, Tommy. I'm gonna have to have a give me what you got because that one I'm stumped on at the moment.
This one I would love to see come back in a modern form, but keeping the mystique and the play features the way they were. Mask.
That was one that was actually on my list.
I love
Didn't get there.
Mask toys. Mask was awesome. They were Transformers without being robots. They were absolutely awesome.
You talk about the Transformers G.I. Joe crossover that we haven't gotten yet outside of comic books, right? And a few toys. That was a nice marriage of the two ideas, wasn't it? You know, the mask gave them a certain thing to be able to do and, you know, feature to be able to play with and build off it.
They had a vehicle. So Matt Tracker was the leader of the good guys. And he had, I think it was like a 1980 something Camaro. And you push the button and the gull wing doors would flop up. And then it would turn into a jet and you'd fly away. And then you had a motorcycle that would turn into a helicopter, you know, stuff like that. You had a Jeep that it would open up and a boat would shoot out. You know, really cool features, really cool. And each vehicle came with a specific driver that had a specific mask, and that mask had a specific, you know, power, if you will. But you know, they had a semi truck that was a command center that also launched a missile. The command base was a gas station that turned into this, like, you know, really cool. I think it was called the Boulder City gas station or something like that. But yeah, Mask.
I'm remembering all these now.
Fantastic.
And I'm sorry for the analogy, but that was what I was picturing in my head and I couldn't articulate.
That's okay. I'm still learning how to articulate.
Too much brain trauma, or you know, maybe too many Toxic Avenger movies before the cartoons. One or the other. I'm trying to think of something good in that whole thing, but at the end of the day, Tommy, a lot of the stuff that I ended up that I've had a very fortunate life that my things that I loved have actually survived with Transformers and Ghostbusters and things like that. That most of the things that I head over heels fell in love with have actually been, you know, around. You know, silly things like Darkwing Duck aside, and some other ones. You know, come on, we even got a Beetlejuice movie again this year.
Yep. And that actually, and that actually had a cartoon as well. That had a cartoon.
A lot of toys.
Mm-hmm. And now that I think about it now, and I wouldn't say that they're necessarily, you know, an adult movie but Back to the Future also got a cartoon.
It did.
You know, and so did, oh shoot, now we got to go into it. Ghostbusters got a cartoon.
But that was because of the success of a movie that you could actually watch with a kid. An older kid.
Technically, there is a scene in which it's implied sex.
I didn't know what happened. I was old. I wasn't old enough. Why is this fly unzipped? Don't worry about it. You get the hand across the eyes.
but that's the part of it though, is that the cartoon came out before the sequel, and that's the reason why we had a more family friendly sequel, Ghostbusters 2, because of the cartoon.
Which wasn't the worst thing in the world. I enjoyed both of them. And honestly, I've loved that the new ones that they've actually picked, well, the Frozen Empire one, I wish they expanded on a little bit, but that was actually a plot line they stole from the cartoons and tried to, you know, spook it up and did really well with it, I thought. I just wish it was a little near the end.
Right.
That was about my only gripe with it. I really enjoyed it though. So if you haven't seen any of the new Ghostbusters, get that one done. So, but yeah, Tommy, I'll one up your one, because like I said, I don't have one that I can think of off the top of my head here for the fact of a movie that or a cartoon or anything like that I'd love to see brought back off the top of my head right now. You cornered me. I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm tapping out.
You're
I'm
welcome.
like Jake Paul beating Mike Tyson last week with cheating. Oh, sorry, I say that out loud.
Not touching it.
80s movies or 90s movies that were R-rated that you were surprised in the midst of the cocktail that we're talking about here that didn't get greenlit for toys. And I have one here that I think would start this one off very appropriately.
What's that?
And that's Mad Max. How did the Thunderdome not get a slew of vehicle toys that ran through the charts?
That is a good one. That is a good one. And but that's the thing is, wow, no, that's actually really good. Now they did make
mess, isn't it?
They did make Mad Max toys, but they were more geared towards, they were the hyper realistic, geared towards collectors, adult collectors, not for the, kid who's going to take them out of the box and play with them.
Yeah, we talk about the ballpark we were just talking about with Mask and GI Joe and everything. What would have been so crazy about having a Hell Cycle with a bunch of fake flames coming out of it that shot, or caps going off, whatever.
I mean, GI Joe had Mad Max-esque vehicles with the dreadnoughts and
but they had a
Zartan.
polish to it.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't a rat rod.
But no, you're 100% right. What movie, what 80s movie do I think could have gotten? Jeez. Well,
yeah. It's not like you were going to make this Spinal Tap. Yeah, there you go. This is Spinal Tap movie figures or something like that until today, right? Oh, good stuff. But
yeah,
like
that's
I said,
what we need is a cartoon version of The Exorcist.
Yeah, there you go. We did get Freddy cartoon ones, or Freddy toys, though, which was just weird because they didn't have a cartoon for Freddy, did they?
I don't think so.
It was just straight to toys for some reason.
Right. But again, I think those
Nightmare on
were
Elm
geared
Street.
towards collectors and not necessarily for the small child to play with. But yeah.
Meanwhile, one that we forgot to mention, I actually had written down here was we pick an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. They had tons of Terminator toys. They had, like I said, all of that stuff. Conan, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And so, for some reason, it seemed like kids in the 80s, that's what we were exposed to. That we went to those movies with our parents and with our our uncles and aunts and whatever, and were those movies appropriate for us to watch? No. I took my nephew to see Deadpool 3, and he's 12 or 13, and I'm like, are you sure your mom knows about this movie? Because we're going to get deep.
She bought me the tickets, Tom. Just go. Sorry, that's never happened.
But no, I mean, it's definitely a different world. I mean, you get away with a lot of stuff in the movies nowadays, but when it comes to certain things like that, it seems like they want to cover it up a little bit,
Yeah.
But yeah. So
on that note,
go ahead.
Should we wrap it up?
Yes. I did want to throw one thing out there about toys. This is a term that I use. Do you know what would you think of if I called something a drugstore toy?
What was it? I'm sorry. A drugstore toy?
A drugstore toy.
Honestly, those cops figures I would have thought would have been in the ballpark of a GoBot.
So this is
how
to
CVS on a Sunday morning or a Saturday with your mom getting the picking up the meds for the week or whatever, and just grabbing something off the shelf.
Well, so back
that's probably where the Rock Lords are now, Mike.
Well, exactly. But I'm talking about like the type of toys, like they had the magnet with the little make a face and you put like the metal shavings on. That's what I would refer to as a drugstore toy. So one
that's
thing
also
that
known as a Mr. Wuzzy.
Okay. But here's a drugstore toy that I want to know if you ever had, and maybe our listeners possibly had. They were balloons, but they weren't balloons. They were a tube of very toxic smelling stuff that you would put at the end of a little straw, and then you would blow this thing and it would be a balloon, and then you would take it, and then it was just like this weird toxic smelling bubble thing, and then when it popped, it just turned into this nasty ball, and then you threw it away. And so cap guns would be a drugstore toy. So did you ever have that toxic balloon sludge thing?
I did, and I don't remember what birthday party or whatever we had it for, but it was, my brother's birthday's in the summer, is in June, so we had a bunch of kids over, had like, all the kids brought the slip and slides over to the house, and we had just like a freaking water park in our backyard, right? And just had a fun time. So my mom bought water balloons, all these things, and we were just pelting each other. I remember them struggling with that thing, and I remember that smell. It still haunts my dreams. I don't know what the hell that thing was called, and if anybody does remember what the hell that damn thing is called, please hit us up in the comments, talk to us, because I want to know what this thing is and find it so I can torture other youth with it. So because this thing is just, like I said, Tommy, that was the most, it was like having the melt of making a tire in a bottle canned up with that smell, and then just, hey, by the way, is this going to spray water everywhere? Don't worry about it. It's a horrible thing. So but yeah, that was my experience with it. It was like, yep, back to water balloons.
So with that being said, to our listening fans out there, our rando fandos, as I like to call you, hit us up in the comments. Tell us about those toy lines and cartoons that you miss from your past, from your childhood, and let us know what you think. And maybe we'll come back to the subject with what you brought up, because we don't always talk about everything. And as you can see, we go off on tangents and then we never circle back, and that's just the way I do it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just because we're both giant nerds with giant levels of ADHD. So it's like, oh, squirrel, or new toy.
I took my Adderall this morning.
I don't know what you're talking about. So, but on that note, that's just kind of how it is around here. Hence the name T&C's Random Fandom. It's that simple. So, but on that note, Tommy, we think we actually technically have next 2 episodes booked up, because we were talking about a certain after Thanksgiving episode here. And then we were talking about next week, we're going to have some fun talking about, we haven't done anything that's specific to TV yet. So my thought was, let's talk about Saturday Night Live movies that have spawned from Saturday Night Live characters, moving them into the silver screen. And we're just going to have some fun talking of everything from the Night at the Roxbury to the Blues Brothers.
Fantastic. I can't wait. Do you want to give them a sneak peek on what we're thinking for the after Thanksgiving episode?
It is the holiday season. Do you want to give them their gift early?
It's the season to be giving. So yes. So what we are going to do is we are going to talk about Christmas movies. What Christmas movies do you watch? What have become traditions in your home when it comes to television shows that are Christmas based, movies that are Christmas based? We want to hear about that. So put your thinking caps on and hit us up and let us know, because we would like to hear from you, and we'll mention you on the show. So that's the Sunday after Thanksgiving will be our Christmas movie television show extravaganza.
Yeah. And to that point, Tommy, I think we need to both figure out a friend to bring on that show and have some fun and make it our first 4-way debate on something, because I think that would be a fun one that would, intrigue. As we have enough Simpsons episodes that would cover a whole episode for just the topic of Christmas.
Yes. But I think we should be more specific to, holiday, because every television show does a holiday show. So, so our SNL show will be Sunday. This Sunday, we're going right back to our normal schedule, as long as Craig can stay healthy. Jerk.
Shouldn't be a problem normally. So we will be back here 11:24 at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and then we will be obviously the following Sunday, which will be funny enough December 1st for the all things Christmas movie episode or whatever we were talking about there. But I do think it'll be fun. That'll be our first. Let's get a few people on the show, and we'll talk to that level. And then that day, Tommy, is the day we will be actually at the toy show.
We will be at the toy show. Oh, and remember, we may have to push it back. We may have to push our show back on the 1st, just slightly a little bit, because I have dress rehearsal night that night at Genesee Crunch.
For you, bud. Got it.
So
we'll figure
it
that
may
one
be
out
a
when we
late
get
show.
there. So to that point, no worries, everybody. We'll figure that one out. Obviously, we are here to be here for your TNC Random Fandom and be the voice for all of your fun here with all things nerddom and fandom. We are here to chit chat and have a great time. That's the whole point. So you all better join in soon. We are starting to get plenty of little plants in social media after 3 episodes. This one will be live on all social media and everything that you can get your podcast hands on afterwards. And just make sure you talk to us at TC Random Fandom on all social media and YouTube. So like us, hit the subscribe buttons, do all the good stuff, and we'll make sure we're here to chit chat with you. Until next time, everybody. Oh, sorry. That's a Wayne's World joke.
Game on.
Peace out, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week on Saturday Night Live movies, and have a great week. Cheers.
Good night.